Welcome to Zen Educate's webinar on positive discipline, connection before correction. My name is Lisa Thornley, and if some of you have already joined some of my previous webinars, you will already know that I am the SENCO and Safeguarding Advisor for Zen Educate. For other people that have joined us this evening who have never met me, my previous experience is over 20 years plus in education and social care settings, working with vulnerable children and young people in pupil referral units, young offenders, and working for Bolton Council as a drama therapist. I graduated as a teacher in 1996 and I've had the pleasure to be Deputy Head of Inclusion in the South East of London, Lewisham Safeguarding Consultant, and now my post here at Zen Educate. So the objectives for this evening's presentation is to hopefully for you to walk away understanding, gaining confidence, identifying a consistent model, and remembering the 2 C's of connection before correction. So to understand how connection reduces unwanted behaviours, to gain confidence in applying strategies to given scenarios that we see ourselves faced with in an educational establishment, to identify a consistent model that you can confidently and consistently apply, and to remember connection before correction. So connection before correction and its importance in effective behaviour management is actually rooted in understanding the attachment theory. And connection before correction is one of the 21st century's favourite methods of instilling discipline in children. Connection before correction was introduced in the UK in about the early 1990s via Caroline Webster Stratton, who is a professor in child clinical psychology and who specialises in attachment theory. And it's this approach that was then developed into understanding attachment in the classroom by Dr. Heather Gibbs. So connecting with purpose through an effective behaviour policy and meaningful discussions with staff, parents and pupils. Now, there are many occasions when educationalists need support in managing unwanted behaviours in their classrooms. And here at Zen, we definitely do understand how difficult it is to teach a pupil and pupils who exhibit difficult, distressing and sometimes violent unwanted behaviour. Pupils actually do discover how to push our buttons as teachers and teaching assistants, and this is often played out in order to exercise their independence and control over us. But what we must realise is that behaviour is a communication, and sometimes they exhibit independence and control over situations that they are often ashamed of or frightened of. More and more educational professionals are being asked to understand behaviours following the ACE awareness model, which is the Adverse Childhood Experience model, and in Keeping Children Safe in Education 2021, we are being asked to gain the voice of the child in more situations. So when the brain perceives a threat, the body goes into a default setting, and what that is known as, you will probably be very aware of, fight, flight or freeze mode of operating. And it does happen with all of us. So if we as educationalists are supporting pupils with challenges and we model a fight mode against the pupil's fight mode, Well, we all know that this could possibly result in a safeguarding concern: pushing, throwing, hurting, running, shouting, aggression. So the perception of threat, fear, is much quicker in an underdeveloped emotional brain, and it requires a co-regulator to gain the voice of the child in an emotionally intelligent way. Therefore, it is really important to find a positive discipline tool that doesn't come across as scary, doesn't come across as threatening, patronising, or unsettling for a child or a young person. Classroom management is still a very thorny issue for teachers, and nearly half of new teachers report that they feel not at all prepared or only somewhat prepared to handle disruptive students. In part, this is because the average teacher training programme, and this may not shock a lot of you, devotes only just 8 hours to the topic of behaviour management. And this lack of training comes with a cost, because it was reported in 2019 that approximately 144 minutes of instructional time on average to behavioural disruptions every week comes out at roughly 3 to 4 weeks over the course of a year. So we've all been to school, and we're all used to the pedagogy of the disciplinarian pedagogy that often leads to developing unhealthy coping mechanisms on part of the child. So as teachers, using the pedagogy, we often see one of 3 characters developing. We see an outward aggressive child, we see a withdrawn child, or we see a pleasing child. So we need to change the pedagogy of the disciplinarian. Before we start to talk about positive discipline, what I would like you to take part in the exercise and just write in the chat is how we feel when we are disciplined. So I'm a believer that when we feel something, we own it a little bit more. So I'd like you to feel the emotion first, and then we can go on to feeling good about positive discipline. So if we start by seeing something that's negative, behaviour-wise, in the corridor or in the playground, and I respond with, oh, no, don't do that. What are you doing? After me just saying that to you as my audience, can you just put in the chat, what were you thinking when I reacted like that? And what were your body languages when I reacted like that? So if you could just write that in the chat, and I'll just have a quick look at that. Wow, some great responses. Yeah, embarrassed, guilty, negative, panicked. Lovely, thank you. Feeling intimidated, and I'd feel shocked, and I'd feel guilty. I'd roll my eyes. Yeah. Yeah, punishment. Yeah, panic, of course. And when we see panic, we see a runner, don't we? So, scenario number 1, we're going to see a child, let's say approximately in reception to year 1. And as a teacher or a teaching assistant, we see child A snatching an item from child B. And we don't want them to do that. And we want them to learn. So with positive discipline, what would you say to child A and child B to prevent them from snatching an item? So if you could just write that in the chat, a positive discipline. So how would you want the child to feel, and what would you want them to learn? So you want them to learn to share Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you, Siha. To share and to be loved, yeah, and to belong in that classroom. Absolutely. These are gorgeous. Great. Thank you, Suzanne. Can we please share the toy? Be kind and share and use your words to ask. Yeah. So feel loved and shared, but also to know not to hurt anyone. Absolutely. Thank you for that. So the positive discipline could look like everything you've said. And I wrote down, I can see that you want that toy. Is that right? So it's good to start a statement knowing that you've seen something, and that makes the child feel recognised immediately. So you may not know their name. So I'm remembering that you are working for Zen Educate as either daily supply or long-term supply, and you may not know this child's name. So I can see that you want that toy. Is that right? Yes, miss, it is. So let's learn how to share, let's learn how to ask, and let's learn how to wait. Shall we do that? So at this point, you could use a timer, an egg timer, or your watch, or numbers. And exactly as you rightly said in the chat, and thank you, audience, that's really brilliant. We are teaching them and we're working together to develop a solution-focused result. So scenario 2, this is for maybe a year 9, year 10 pupil, and they've got their grade back from their exam and it's not good at all. So So let's see how we can improve. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. You're a good learner, but you could try it this way. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really lovely. I can see that you've tried. How can we work together? Humour, thanks. That's brilliant. Yeah, Giovanni, that's a good result, but yeah. Yeah, and start with positives, the old-fashioned praise sandwich. Start with a positive, put you know, a strength indicator in there and end with a positive. Yeah, and be consistent. Look at it in a positive way. Now you know what to work on. Nafisa, that's brilliant. And you could get great results next time. That's really lovely. Thanks, guys. So here I've just put very similar to you. It must be really disappointing to get that grade, but I tell you what we can do. We can work together to make a plan to support you getting ready for your next assignment. So what we're going to do is we're going to work together with a plan. And I'm going to set that up for you, and we're going to work together maybe on a Tuesday and a Thursday evening. So it's about coming together and making a solution-focused plan. Now, the final scenario, and we'll do this a bit quicker, but you guys will deal with this every day, from reception, nursery, right through to year 11, older in some schools that I know you guys go in for us. So a pupil gets up out of their seat and you want this to stop. So maybe it's happened twice. What would you do? A pupil keeps getting up out of their seat, and you want them to stop doing this and you want them to stay in their seat. So the motivation is you want it to stop and you want them to stay in their seat. So what would you do with that one? Because it's quite hard, especially when we don't know them. Work with them for a short period of time, Christina, brilliant. Yeah, connection before correction. Keep them engaged in activities. And it does depend on the subject and stress. That's brilliant. But again, you see, by you understanding that, you're telling me that you are connecting. Calm them down with their name. Brilliant. Are you okay? You can talk to me if you need me. So again, brilliant answers. And is there something that I can help you with? So again, that's exactly what I was saying. Is there anything that I can help you with? Are you struggling with something? Because I can see that you keep getting up out of your seat. Also, don't be worried about talking about class rules and just reiterating perhaps the behaviour policy in the school around safety of getting out of their seats. But also, I think somebody did mention in the chat to give them an activity to do. So if we notice that a child has got out of their seat, maybe there is an underlying condition and we haven't been told of that, and we often aren't as daily supply. So ask them to collect the worksheets at the end of the lesson. And I would like you to remain in your seat, but you can help me at the end of the lesson and support me with collecting the worksheets. So thanks for that. So let's move on to positive. So learning through positive discipline, I'm just going to give you a very quick exercise, and I'd like you to do it, and it's such a shame I can't see you do it, but you're more than likely to put in the chat how it made you feel. This is something that me and my colleague did just before I came on to deliver the webinar. As teachers and teaching assistants working for Zen Educate, we know you have high expectations of pupils, and we love that. And actually, that's the beauty of being a really positive teacher and TA, to wake up every morning knowing that you have high expectations for your class and pupils. And to do that is to actually start positive. So one of the strategies that's really lovely to start in a classroom is to actually tell them the story of winning a race, to actually visualise winning a race. So achieving the end goal and to get a medal. And when we win something in a race, our body language is automatically lifted to the sky. We punch the sky, we raise our hands up. Yes, we've done it. So if you could just do that for me, yes, we've done it. We've achieved already 6 slides. Yes, we've done it. So learning through a positive mindset and a positive body language helps you as teachers and teaching assistants to embed positive discipline. You believe it, you feel it. And it's said that we learn best when we trust and respect and we feel established in that space, in that environmental classroom. Trust and respect are the foundation tools to establishing, maintaining and restoring relationships. So how do we do this when we're a supply teacher and a TA, and sometimes a daily supply, and we only have a short while with pupils? And the aim of connection before correction is to develop listening skills and reduce anxiety and to find solutions. And we think, I've only got a day and I don't know them. So I'm just going to talk you through 8 proactive strategies to connect very quickly with pupils and with children and young people. Now, we do forget the structure of greeting students at the door. It's called the pulse test. That's how it was taught with me in 1996. My mentor referred to it as the pulse test. It's like you opening your front door at home, you greet your friend, you greet your family member, and you check in with them. Hi, how are you? You look nice. Have you had a nice weekend? Thank you for sitting down calmly. So the first 2 things are to greet the students at the door, the pulse test, to check in. It's also the checking in is a strategy that's been recognised as reducing disruptive behaviour by approximately 75%. And that's because by checking in, we can sometimes anticipate a disruption that's probably developed in the lunch or at break time. For example, going back to the students that keep getting out of their seats, there's often a reason why that may be. Reminders are commonly verbal, but we can also be visual. So we can also use music, lights, ringing a bell, or a physical sign, a hand signal of thumbs up, a high five, just to get the students to come together in a way that doesn't need a disciplinarian pedagogy. I need to practice how to say that. So what about seating against what about the environment? So lots of teachers and teaching assistants are advocates for seating plans, and as was I to a degree, but as a drama teacher, seating plans were very rare for me. So what I focused on was the environment of the classroom. Was it too warm? Was it too cold? Did I play music on arriving and entering? Was there a consistency in my environment that enabled the children to feel safe and confident to take part in my classes? Also, to give behaviour specific praise. So instead of saying that was great, why was it great? That was great because I saw you use a monologue, or I saw you become involved with your buddy. Thank you for entering the classroom with respect is always a very good starter. 7, to be consistent and clear with expectations. So expectations, when we don't know what possibly the behaviour policy is in a school, when we are just going in for the day or a week, is really hard to get your head around. So for me, I think it's expectations of kindness, of respectfulness, of listening and responding. So I used to use respect, communicate and focus. Some of my colleagues used respect, listen, respond, consider. So I think it's about knowing the classroom, the age range, but to have 3 real, consistent, clear expectations on the board or written on a whiteboard that you can keep going back to. Also, it's really important to move around the room to check in on student progress, not to police students, but to interact with them, to actively supervise, to be proactive, to walk up to them, to ask them, as one of you just said in the chat before, to talk to them, ask them, do they need help? Also, smiling and making eye contact can reduce physical or psychological distance with students, and it boosts students' positive feelings towards a teacher and a TA, and a smile goes a long, long way. So, a model that you can draw on the board as soon as you go into the classroom is a really clear, concise indicator of what you want. So expectations, you set clear expectations, 1, 2 or 3. So in my class today, I expect respect and to communicate clearly. That means to listen, to respond and to hold your hand up, something like that. You would then model that. You would then be consistent with that. You would then acknowledge when that is happening with positive reinforcement. And at the end of the lesson, you would not just evaluate their academia, you would evaluate how they have interacted socially and emotionally in your classroom. So the circle of positive discipline is an excellent model to just put up on the board. And you can differentiate that depending on the year group. Expectations, I will model. Consistency, acknowledge and evaluate. And it is both inclusive and engaging across the board. So, zones of responsive communication in your classroom is something that I really want to share with you. We're so used to hearing about zones of self-regulation. Well, how do we do that when we don't actually know a child or children that we're going to teach? And we're walking into a classroom, or often in my case as a drama teacher, a big hall. So what I decided to do, and this is something that has worked for me for many, many years, I decided to split up a space into zones, like we very often do in our home. We have a dining room table, we know we're going to eat there. We have a kettle, we know that our cups are going to be in that cupboard above the kettle. We have a settee, we have a television, and we know that that's where we chill and watch TV and listen to music. So why can't we do that in our classroom? So a strategy for responsive communication that flows effortlessly and is absolutely no indicator at all of where a child is in an academic sense, allows a child to respond in a safe and comfortable way. So you would start the lesson by saying, in your lesson today, I want you to be aware of the zones of communication. So when I'm at the front, what I really expect is eyes on me, ears turned up and mouth turned down. So when you're at the front and you're speaking to maybe year 10 and 11, what I expect is for you to look at me and for you to really listen to me. When I move to the side of the classroom, the left or the right, that's an expectation where we will be sharing data on a topic that we're discussing, we'll be finding out things. And my expectation when I'm stood at the side is that you will be given 5 to 10 minutes to have a buddy communication. So that when you move to the side, the expectation is that your class know what is expected of them. When I move to the back, this is when I expect you to move to the front. So if I ask Sahira to move to the front when I'm at the back, I want Sahira to stand up or vocally speak, sharing or displaying what she has learned. So effectively, when I'm at the back, I'm you, and you're at the front, you're the teacher. When I'm near the door, that is an expectation that I will be asking you questions to review the lesson. And the class know that the lesson is coming to an end because you're moving to the door. And you would ask them 3 questions: a strength, a struggle, and next steps. So when I'm near the door, I expect that when I ask a question, you raise your hand. An ending of a lesson can remain near the door, and the expectation is that when the questions are finished, you allow the class to leave. And that is a real indicator, I would suggest, on whether it's primary, secondary, SEN, and whether the class is comfortable to leave in a less structured manner. So then at that point, it's best to go back to the front, to end the lesson, to thank them for participating in your lesson today, to put the chairs underneath and to leave. So the zones of responsive communication in your classroom are a safe, inclusive boundary. The front, the side, the back, near the door, and the ending either remains near the door or at the front. Trust me, it's a really inclusive, safe strategy. Now, let's not forget praise. Praising anyone really makes somebody feel included, belonged, and safe. However, to overpraise also can increase unwanted behaviours. So for every one corrective verbalisation, we need to follow it up with 4 positives. So corrective language in the classroom, just put something in the chat for me that you use as corrective language in the classroom. Obviously, the real obvious one is, I don't appreciate it when, and I'd like you then to follow that up with a positive. Thank you, I like it when. So let's just see what you put in the chat, if possible. Yeah, praise someone for doing the right thing. I can only hear voices with hands up, and thank you for raising your hands. Yeah, and at the end, ask them to share 3 things that they've really enjoyed, 3 things that they've learned. So thank you for let's see who can. I really appreciate. I love, wow, what an answer. And also, the physical feeling of praise, where you can get the class to stand up, pretty similar to how we did the hands raised. And before they leave, they tap themselves on their back. So, connection before correction is rooted in attachment. And in the words of Mr. Roosevelt, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I suppose that is an indicator that when we complete our training as a teacher, when we participate in training as a teaching assistant, we walk away feeling that we know so much. And we often forget the simple strategy of connection. And it's really important, never so much as it is at the moment. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So, if you've got any questions for me, I'm happy to open up now and answer any questions that you may have around common behavioural problems, strategies. So if you want to put that in the chat, we could have a quick Q&A, if that's all right with you. If not, I've got, what do you suggest for pupils who struggle with ADHD or ODD, oppositional disorder? Yeah, and strategies for work refusers. So again, let's just think really simple around disruption, ADHD, and work refusers. That is all rooted in I need help. Everyone needs help, we just project it in a different way. So let's think about going back to what we talked about in terms of the 3 pupils that we often see. Outward, inward, pleaser. They all need help. So strategies for pupils that don't listen are things like their senses having to have an indicator to make them listen. So music, a bell, a timer. So I want you to complete this task. You have 5 minutes and the bell goes. Give the opportunity of typing on a laptop to write is a great example, again, alleviating. And how do you deal with students who persistently refuse to follow instructions? They persistently refuse to follow instructions because they're also asking you, what are they following and why are they following those instructions? So again, it goes back to keeping instructions very clear, very concise, expectations. And again, it is about saying, I expect you I can see you are not following the instructions. Can I ask why? Also, for using your teaching assistant for you as a teacher, it's really important to say to your teaching assistant at the end of the class, I noticed today that Lisa wasn't very well behaved. Perhaps at the beginning of the lesson, we can have a discussion. So write down their feelings to show how they feel and refusing to follow instructions. And it's really important as well, at the beginning of the lesson, I always find when I don't know a class, I get a piece of paper and I give them each a piece of paper, a very small piece of paper, ask them to put their name on it, screw that piece of paper up, put it in a cup, and when you are wanting to just get to know the class at the very beginning, just take the piece of paper out and it will say their name, and you might want to say, okay, so at the end of the lesson, can you tell me, Billy, what you have learned today? And the name's in the cup. And it's just about being one step ahead of a class. And classroom disruption, you're right, Catherine, is very difficult. But what also becomes very difficult is our mindset that it is difficult. So try to break it down about what the disruption is trying to tell you. Quite often a disruptive classroom is a disorganised classroom. Something is happening underneath. You know yourself very well as a teacher or a TA, and you trust yourself as well and understand you're right, the thoughts and the feelings that are being projected onto onto the space. So the common behavioural problems of students in classrooms, sometimes they really irritate us, and sometimes they're really thoughtless behaviours. And that triggers something, and that's what I said right at the beginning, it triggers something in us. So we need to understand that we need to meet a pupil to support self-regulation. We can't meet them with their frustration. So we need to go through those and exercise those. And here at Zen Educate, as your SEN safeguarding advisor, I'm always happy for you to connect and for you to call me and to arrange a slotted time to talk about a pupil that you're having problems with. And I am really happy to offer what I refer to as SEND Zoom clinics and call clinics. So just give me a call if in the next couple of days you want to talk about a particular case study. And remember, we won't share names, but we'll share strategies. So finally, what makes Zen Educate different to traditional agencies? So some of you may not know this, but I'm actually registered on the platform, and I was a teacher for Zen Educate for a while. And one of the main reasons why I decided to go on the platform was because of the ethos and the ethics behind Zen Educate. We're not an agency, we're a social enterprise, and we are an ethical alternative to supply agencies. And on average, this allows us to pay teachers more while keeping the cost of supply low for schools. And we've saved schools over £3 million to date. We're also a really high-tech company, so we make things easy for you and we streamline them for you. We have our online calendar for days you can and can't work. And we have the option to self-select for roles and dates that you are available for. I believe that our platform gives you and the school more autonomy. Everything's on the platform. It allows you to have conversations with schools and for you to develop a positive professional relationship and to get to know the culture of your school. So here at Zen, we really do believe in connection. We use tech, we have genuine relationships with account managers and the rest of the team. And I'd like to say we offer you high quality training and support. So if you haven't already registered with us, please do. If you haven't already downloaded the app, please do. And with that, you can enjoy a stress-free approach to nurturing pupils in being the best that they can be, academically, socially, and emotionally. And I really want to say thank you very much for attending the webinar on connection before correction. Differentiated discipline is something that is very new and up and coming, and I really want to embed that within the philosophy of Zen Educate. I'm wishing you a lovely evening and thanks again for joining.